Welcome to the Produce Moms Podcast, where we believe there is a produce mom in all of us. I'm Lori Taylor, founder and CEO of the Produce Moms. For 10 years, I sold fresh produce to over 300 grocery stores in the U.S. And today, my team and I are fully focused on inspiring people to eat more fruits and vegetables. This show is just one of the ways that we hope to inspire you and your family to eat more produce and live a better life. If you like what you're hearing on the podcast, join our community of almost 40,000 in all 50 states and over 30 countries by visiting theproducemoms.com/subscribe. And be sure to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for being here. Enjoy today's show. Welcome back, everyone. This is the Produce Moms Podcast, and I am Lori Taylor. It is going to be such an incredible episode today. We are welcoming back to the show a man who is truly he's recognized, he's respected throughout the entire world when it comes to grocery retail and e-commerce. And you're going to also love this. He was on the show in 2019. Episode 41 is where you can first hear from Brittain Ladd. Well, he's back today. His show, all the way back from March 2019, still today ranks in our top 20 all-time downloads. And we are just thrilled to welcome him back to the show. Brittain, it's going to be an incredible conversation talking about the current state of grocery retail and all of the incredible insights that you have to share.
Well, I'm so glad to be back on the show, Lori. I absolutely loved our last conversation, and I'm looking forward to us speaking even more today about the topic of grocery retail.
Well, thank you, Brittain. Yeah, it's going to be great. You know, you've taught me so much in this space. You helped me realize one of the things you said in the last episode, and it still sticks with me today, is that retailing comes down to two things: logistics and marketing. And that gives me hope in what we do at the Produce Moms and being a hyper relevant catalyst, to drive fresh produce awareness and consumption and sales at grocery retail. And just can't thank you enough for your thought leadership, because you've taught me so much. So with that, I'd love for you to introduce yourself to our listeners today and tell them a little bit more about your background and what you're up to right now.
So everyone, I'm Brittain Ladd. I actually began my career in the United States Marine Corps. I served in the Marine Corps for 6 years and then ended up being medically discharged because of a few incidents I had in the Marines. And then I went to college, earned my bachelor's degree, went on to earn 3 master's degrees, and lived and worked globally. I started to work in retail and logistics and supply chain, but because I was living in China, then lived in India, then lived in Saudi Arabia, lived in Europe, I really had a great opportunity to work with some tremendous people who taught me a lot. And I really fell in love with retail and logistics. I fell in love with doing research. When I went to Amazon, I focused on designing multiple programs for Amazon. For example, their strategy to become a third-party logistics company. Prior to joining Amazon, I was the first person to recommend that they acquire Whole Foods. I wrote a research report in 2013. And today what I do is I support Pulse Integration. I am their chief marketing and logistics officer. And I still provide consulting to several different companies. And I write articles. I write articles for Forbes, and I write articles for my own website, BrittainLadd.com. So great to be here.
Oh, you're the best. I love it. What an incredible background. So, Brittain, last time we talked, 2019, the world I don't even feel like it's the same. Here we are in 2021. So much has happened in the last 2 years since you've been on the show. So much has happened in the last year. So let's look back at 2020. Help our listeners today understand how tremendous of an impact COVID-19 was on the grocery retailers and food retailers everywhere.
Well, so what we have to really look at is prior to COVID-19, online sales for grocery was only about 3% of a grocery retailer's business. And that's why grocery retailers didn't really care about online grocery retail. Mm-hmm. That's why so many grocery retailers signed Instacart. Now, I wrote articles about Instacart. I warned retailers not to do business with Instacart because all they're going to do is teach Instacart their business. But retailers didn't care because they would say, well, Brittain, it's only 3% of my business. And then comes COVID-19. And in a period of just a few months,
Yep.
Online sales went from 3% of a grocery retailer's business to, in some cases, being 50% of a
Wow.
retailer's business.
Yeah.
And what happened is their world changed overnight, and they realized they had to do something different. And so retailers have had no choice but to understand that consumer behavior has changed, and they've had to increase their focus on online grocery retail. If COVID were to go away tomorrow, the impact has been so great that I believe online retail would still stay between 15 and 20%. Now, what's interesting is that I was predicting that that even by 2025, prior to COVID, online grocery would probably only be 12 to 15% of a grocery retailer's business. So it could easily be in excess of 20%. So make no mistake, COVID changed everything for the grocery industry.
Yeah, it sure did. And, last time you were on, we were talking about the concept of dark kitchens, and the importance of, it's really not so much meal kits. What people want is meals ready to eat that are like hot and full of health. And now, as I follow you, Brittain, like micro fulfillment is another huge topic that kind of falls in the same bucket in a way. Maybe, I don't know, help educate me and our listeners on what has happened in the micro fulfillment world. And please start with like even just a definition of what is micro fulfillment.
Sure. Well, I actually designed one of the first micro-fulfillment solutions back in 2013.
I mean, of course you did. That's,
well,
it's like as you're talking, I'm like, of course you did that.
well, I don't want to give the impression that I'm anywhere near as good and capable as some of the individuals who are designing the systems of today. The system I designed was what I was able to design based on my capabilities. So I designed a micro-fulfillment system that would actually sit inside a grocery store, either in the ceiling of a grocery store or in the back room, and it would do all of the picking, fulfilling of online groceries. But this is in the same paper that I recommended that Amazon should acquire Whole Foods. So when I posted the paper, everybody said I was an idiot. They said, number one, Amazon will never acquire Whole Foods, and number two, no one will ever put robots in a store. Well, it's happened. Both has happened, and here's why. The reason why companies went to micro-fulfillment is that micro-fulfillment gives them a way to fulfill closer to their customers. And micro-fulfillment is nothing more than robotic solutions that can fulfill online orders and products for and other retail products. And the best way I can describe this for your listeners is this. Look at a Rubik's Cube. And imagine that Rubik's Cube was now 20,000 square feet, and each cube holds inventory. And on top of the Rubik's Cube are robots, and they go left and right and backwards and forwards. And they can pull these cubes up and pull inventory out of it and put the cubes back. Well, that's exactly what the number one micro-fulfillment center auto store, that's exactly what they do. And so because the robotic technology is so advanced, it allows retailers to say, well, let me put my groceries inside the auto store, and then it can fulfill the order for me. And then I'll only pick the chilled and frozen products. So now I'm only picking manually about 15% of the products that a customer orders. So it is absolutely massive in growth. And that's what I spoke about 2 years ago. And it's what I've been writing about. So Walmart just yesterday announced they're going to build micro-fulfillment centers inside their stores. The retailer H-E-B announced an agreement with AutoStore to open up micro-fulfillment centers across their network. And by the middle of February, there's going to be 2 more very large grocery retailers announcing that they have signed agreements with micro-fulfillment companies to install micro-fulfillment centers inside their stores.
Wow.
On average, a retailer loses about $25 for every online grocery order they fulfill. So they absolutely have to get control over these massive costs. And the way they're going to do it is micro-fulfillment. In regards to dark kitchens is absolutely one of the fastest growing areas. Travis Kalanick, who started Uber, he created another company, and he's been focused on opening dark kitchens across the U.S. Mark Lohr, who just left Walmart, has a tremendous interest in redesigning the way people order food. That includes groceries and restaurant meals. And so dark kitchens and logistics is a big focus area for him as well. So what I really want to say to people is be prepared for more and more focus on dark kitchens, more and more focus on micro-fulfillment, because it's now mandatory that you have to be able to fulfill better, faster, and cheaper and closer to your customers. And that's what micro-fulfillment does.
Right. And so as you're talking about it, I mean, I can't help but identify there's real threats to fresh produce, I feel like. Help me not feel so nervous about it. But, I feel like, how are these robots going to pick their fresh produce? To the specs,
So here's really what's interesting. There's a false belief that a robot is actually picking the product. Actually, That's not true. So what happens is the grocery retailer, when they are buying fresh produce, they still need to go through the process of making sure that their supplier gives them the best.
Yeah, QA and all of that.
Absolutely, all of that. When that fresh produce is ever put inside a micro-fulfillment solution, those solutions are very gentle. As a matter of fact, in an auto store, you can take 2 glasses of champagne, fill it to the top, and run it through the complete machine. And when that tote comes back, the champagne hasn't spilled.
Whoa.
So that's actually, there's an actual video you can watch of that happening. So these are very gentle, but here's the main thing, Lori, that I want you to understand. I've always stressed, I don't like the idea of putting fresh produce inside anything that's robotic. And instead, what I say is put all of the ambient temperature product inside the micro-fulfillment center. And then next to the micro-fulfillment center, put fruits and vegetables, meat, milk, eggs, dairy products, things like that, and still have the pickers make sure that when they're picking anything for the customer, they're picking only the best, the freshest, so that a customer doesn't get an apple that's, that's dented really bad, or oranges that have spoiled so badly they've already split. So that's how you make sure as a grocery retailer that even though you're using automation to fulfill orders, you never ever fail to realize that quality and freshness are absolutely the main thing you have to maintain when it comes to fresh products.
Yeah, it's paramount. And, fresh produce is the consumer insights tell our industry, and there's an abundant amount of research out there. Fresh produce is the department in grocery that gets people inside the brick and mortar. Is that do you think that that's going to continue to be the huge draw to traditional grocery? And do you view micro-fulfillment as something that, just enhances grocery retail, or does it actually compete with brick and mortar retail? Like are grocery stores as we know it in the shopper experience, like walking through the door, grabbing your cart and picking your own, is that a dying art or consumer experience?
Well, actually, when it comes to fresh produce, it's going to expand, and let me explain why. So if you read my 2013 research report, A Beautiful Way to Save Woolworths, I outline a micro-fulfillment center. I design it, but I also design stores for Amazon. And the stores are put much more focus on fresh produce. And all of that center store aisle items, the boring ambient temperature product, I say put that in the back room or put it inside the micro-fulfillment center. So that you open up the store so that there's much more fresh produce, meat, milk, eggs, dairy, much better selections of cheese, areas for cafes. And so the store really becomes a haven and a playground for people who love fresh produce. That's what Amazon actually is building. The designs of the stores Amazon are building today are nearly identical to what I created in 2013, because Amazon realizes that they want customers to come in and stay and enjoy the experience. People will walk around and look at fruits and vegetables and taste food for hours, but they're not going to go to a grocery store and looking at canned goods for hours at a time. That's the boring part of shopping.
Right.
So you'll see more and more grocery stores putting the focus on the fresh produce side and minimizing what you see in the center store aisle items. As far as the micro fulfillment centers, they're massively beneficial to the retailer. Amazon will soon be opening stores with micro fulfillment centers built inside the store. Walmart is putting the micro fulfillment centers inside their stores so that they are fulfilling orders. But it also gives the retailer an opportunity to pull some of that boring ambient temperature product out of the way and make it much more pleasurable for the consumer to be shopping. So it's not that micro-fulfillment competes with brick and mortar stores. It's that micro-fulfillment, regardless of who uses it, is to their benefit. So let's talk Instacart. I'm absolutely convinced that Instacart is going to open up 80 to 100 micro-fulfillment centers, probably by 2022 at the latest.
Wow.
By 2021, Instacart will go public. By 2025, Instacart will be an online-only grocery retailer, and they will open up their own Instacart-branded stores, and they will stop making deliveries for their grocery customers today. What will make that possible? Micro-fulfillment. Because by having 80 to 100 and eventually several hundred micro-fulfillment centers, Instacart can have groceries, fresh product, fresh produce, delivered to these micro-fulfillment centers, delivered to their stores, and then Instacart can deliver direct to the customers. If you think about it, it's a silly model that people go to the Instacart platform only to shop at another retailer. So if Instacart says we are now an online retailer and we have stores, they're going to be incredibly popular. And I think they're going to be much more successful by going to this model. Micro-fulfillment is going to make what I just said possible for them.
Yeah, I mean, people are already trained to open the app and do their shopping within their platform.
Exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Brittain, I didn't know you're the guy I needed to thank for the ability to have a glass of champagne before walking through Whole Foods right there in the store. But no, I love your remarks. I love that. I feel much more comfortable really with this being, I feel like it's actually a wonderful evolution for the things that I'm most passionate about and for the farmers that my business helps serve. It's, I feel like it's all very favorable for fresh produce, what you're explaining and describing.
Oh, it is. But here's something I really want to remind everyone. You have to be prepared for big things occurring. Yeah. And I believe one of the biggest things that are going to occur, I will not be surprised to see this happen, is that Amazon divest Whole Foods. And the reason why I believe Amazon will sell Whole Foods is that Amazon is going to be able to sell more groceries through their Amazon Fresh branded stores than they'll sell through Whole Foods.
Yeah.
Consumers are looking for a new experience. They're looking for organic product and branded CPG products. Yep. You can't find branded CPG products inside Whole Foods. And I think as Amazon opens up their own stores, they're going to realize that growth at Whole Foods is stagnated. They're going to realize that they really can't do a lot with Whole Foods. And what I believe should happen is this. The retailer Target should go to Amazon and acquire Whole Foods from Amazon so that Target can open up Whole Foods markets inside their stores and own Whole Foods. Whole Foods customers overwhelmingly shop at Target. I think it's the best thing to give Target and millions of their customers terrific access to great fresh produce, but it allows Amazon to focus more on opening up even more of their Amazon Fresh stores, which also have a focus on fresh produce. So I think anything related to fresh produce has a bright future in retail because the retailers understand that's what's attracting the customers.
I love that. Good. Well, good. So it makes me feel confident about the future of my business too, Brittain. No, it's amazing. And so you've shared so many great insights. I would love, as you talk about the concept of like a potential target acquisition of Whole Foods and then, a Whole Foods concept within the Target stores. I mean, do you see anyone outside of grocery retail doing that? Like, I know from some of the articles I've read on your site, like you've talked a lot about what Kohl's has done with bringing Amazon into their, brick and mortar. And are there any other retailers that are established where you're seeing there's potential here for grocery sales to take place within these other different types of retailers, or maybe retailers that are actively doing that wouldn't be considered grocers, but they're doing a good job at selling groceries?
Well, I recommended to Kohl's over 2 years ago that they need to open up Amazon branded stores inside their Kohl's stores. Mm-hmm. And it hadn't happened. But in August of last year, Kohl's announced that they're in a pilot with Amazon to test an Amazon Fresh store inside a Kohl's store. Nice. Kohl's has over 1,000 locations. If the pilot is successful, I absolutely recommend, and I believe Amazon is going to acquire Kohl's, and you will see Kohl's, their entire platform is going to transition, but they'll have groceries in their stores, and I think it's a perfect fit. You have to look at the convenience store industry. The convenience store industry has overlooked fresh products for years, but COVID changed that. Because what the convenience store industry realized is that we have customers looking to us to meet their needs. Yeah. And so I've strongly recommended to the convenience store industry to go down the path of micro-fulfillment and put much more focus on groceries with a focus on fresh food, fresh fruits and vegetables, meat, milk, eggs, and so forth. And so I know for a fact that's going to happen. Mm-hmm. And what I'm also convinced is that the restaurant delivery companies, DoorDash, Postmates, and others, they're going to work much more closely with grocery retailers to where they start to deliver online grocery orders. Yes. And what I've recommended to the restaurant delivery companies and the grocery retailers is that work together and introduce dark kitchens within each grocery retailer's network, so that they now have the ability to sell meals, cooked meals, prepared meals, ready-to-eat meals, and that they too put more of a focus on fresh fruits and vegetables and meals. And so when you look at the convenience store industry, you look at what Kohl's is doing, I absolutely believe you're going to see this transformation where groceries really become strategic, much more strategic. And that's why I believe Target absolutely should acquire Whole Foods. I think it's perfect for them. And so I know for a fact that groceries will just continue to grow in importance. And we are going to see them across many, many more industries or many, many more retail formats. But also, you will see a continued focus on some retailers just being online only. But their niche is going to be delivering very fresh products. And also don't forget the RoboMart concept, which is the ability to hail a van as easy as you hail an Uber. And the RoboMarts have fruits and vegetables and other products on them. So it's like bringing the fresh fruits and vegetable section right to your house so you can go pull them off of these vans that are refrigerated.
Oh my gosh. Amazing. Does that exist right now?
Oh, absolutely. I've been an advisor to them for several years. I was the first person to write an article about them, and they're live in several areas. And before you know it, they'll be nationwide. But I coined the phrase, hail a store instead of hail a car. And It gives consumers the ability to pull out their phone and use an app, and they'll be able to eventually see where are the RoboMart vans, what's on the vans, what products are on them, and they just choose the van they want, they hail it, and it comes right to their home.
Amazing. I love it. I want it in Indianapolis.
What's interesting is I was living in Russia in 2019, and I actually was designing this program for the world's largest grocery retailer, Patorchka, in Russia. And Russia's actually doing most of what you and I are already talking about.
Yeah, amazing. Your global insights are definitely, it's a big reason why you're such a widely respected leader here and everywhere. But Brittain, so where does all this innovation leave? Like, stores that you would consider more traditional grocers, the places like Kroger and Safeway, Albertsons. And I mean, they're really going to have to innovate.
Well, Albertsons has a tremendous CEO, a man named Vivek Sankaran. And Vivek is one of those individuals who understands the importance of technology. He absolutely has already challenged Albertsons to make a massive investment in micro-fulfillment. And so they're currently in the process of evaluating what their options are. Kroger entered into an agreement with a company called Ocado. I was the first person to write an article and make that recommendation, and that's why Kroger hired me as a consultant. So I worked with Kroger to understand the importance of introducing an Ocado network and micro-fulfillment so that Kroger can fulfill faster, closer to customers. And anytime you can fulfill faster and closer to customers, you're keeping your fresh produce that much more fresh. But there's also something that's happening out there that I want to call out. There's a company called Wild Fork Foods. And what's interesting about Wild Fork Foods is today they have about 35 stores. By 2025, they'll probably have 750 stores, but they don't sell anything fresh at all. Everything is 100% frozen, all meat, all seafood, all vegetables, everything.
Wow.
But what's interesting is they freeze that product as soon as possible. And so although we talk a lot about fresh food and everything, something that I think would be very interesting for your business is there room in Lori Taylor's ecosystem that you find a way to say there are ways to have very healthy frozen product, and it's a way to maybe meet the needs of consumers for fresh product, but in a different way. And I know for a fact that more and more retailers are also looking at, I want as great a fresh produce as I can, but how do I have better frozen product as well? But they need it to be more healthy, more nutritious than what they have today in like the frozen TV dinners and that.
Yeah.
So,
and not like a byproduct of what you would get in the fresh, you know what I mean? Like you buy frozen broccoli, half the time it's just like stems and like tiny little florets. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. And so that's something that when I became aware of this several years ago, and then I met you, I'm like, wow, this is something Lori should be driving, because you'd be able to look at it and say, hey, time out. A frozen bag of broccoli, as you just described, that stems and has none of the really nutritious aspects of fresh broccoli isn't doing anyone any good. And so what I believe you're going to see is that there's a massive shift towards fresh produce. And I love that. But there's also these new interesting retail formats that are coming out where they're like, well, we'll sell you everything frozen and we'll deliver it to you. And you can't ignore those types of stores because they're very popular in France. They're very popular. They're becoming more popular in other areas. And so the Krogers and the Albertsons and all the other retailers out there, the key word is this: innovation. And the second key word is relevance. Because if they don't innovate, they're not going to be relevant. If they don't understand what their customers need and want and provide it to them, they're not going to be relevant. And I think what we will talk about 2 years from now is which one of those retailers remained relevant.
Mm-hmm. Yep, you're right. So, Brittain, I've got to ask you, and as we prepare to close out this amazing episode, where does fresh produce rank? How important is it?
Oh, it's absolutely number one. You speak to any executive at a retail store, and they will tell you that fresh produce is becoming a competitive advantage. And the struggle is everybody wants the freshest of the fresh, the best of the best. I think Amazon should be complimented for their Amazon Fresh stores. I think they've designed the best stores. They have the best format, the best layout. And I know for a fact you'll see more and more retailers trying to copy that Amazon Fresh look. And all that means is this: there'll be much more of a focus on fresh produce. And I think that's just a wonderful thing. So I'm a big fan of yours. You know, I'm a big fan of people understanding the value of making sure they're getting as much fresh produce in their diet as they can and in their family's diet. And I think anything we can do to keep the focus on fresh produce, it's absolutely what should be done.
Oh, I love that. Well, thank you, Brittain. This has been truly just a pleasure to reconnect with you, have you back on the show. We got to do it more often. Next time I'm not waiting 2 years to have another conversation and episode with you. But, with that, the tradition hasn't changed. You still get the final goodbye and send off of the show, the closing remarks. But from, just deep gratitude from me and everyone at the Produce Moms. And thank you so much for continuing to educate and inspire me as I charge forward on my professional journey. You're the best.
Well, thank you so much. Absolutely love being here. The way that I'll end it is this: be prepared for the 2020s. We're going to see some very, very exciting things. I think Shopify is going to dominate the 2020s. I think they're going to become Amazon's only real predator, only real competitor. Look for Facebook to do some interesting things. I recommend Facebook acquire Instacart or Shopify to acquire Instacart. So anything that makes the grocery business better for the consumer, I'm 100% for it.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Produce Moms Podcast. If you or someone you know would like to be a featured guest, just send an email to Lori@theproducemoms.com. We know there is a produce mom in you because there's a produce mom in all of us. Join our community on Facebook and all social platforms. Help us change the way America eats. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.